Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features X Factor number 86, cover dated January 1993, and this is Executioner's Song Part 10 of 12. So the cover here by Jay Lee, featuring Apocalypse hovering over, is it an injured, distressed Professor X with the completely covered in the techno-organic virus. And in the background we have got a maniacally grinning Archangel. So has Archangel reverted to Apocalypse's original design to be his angel of death? Well, we're going to have to open up the issue to find out. But first, let's take a look at the card that was included in the polybag covering this issue originally. And we've got a depiction of the Dark Riders by Greg Capullo, inked by Harry Candelario and colored by Paul Mounts. And if I turn the card around, we'll see some text from Strife's strike file. Play with fire, expect to get burned. Of the many children Apocalypse has littered on the planet like so much flotsam, the Dark Riders were but another attempt to create a group of followers true to their creator's credo, survival of the fittest. So there you go. Let's now open up the comic itself to our splash page. And of the three parts drawn by Jay Lee for the X Factor portions of the crossover, this is definitely artistically his best. And we have a very designy splash page here of Scott and Jean, who in the previous part of the crossover, Uncanny X-Men 296, escaped from Strife's base and very unexpectedly found themselves on the moon and in an airless vacuum. So we've got the planet Earth there in the background. And we have our creative team here, written by Peter David, penciled by Jay Lee, inked by Al Milgrom, lettered by Steve Dutrow, I don't know who that is, and colored by Glynis Oliver. And Glynis Oliver's colors in this particular issue are really excellent and complement well Jay Lee's art. And I think that Jay Lee opened up his art a little bit more in this issue. We're going to see a lot less spotting of blacks and more open drawings for the colorist, and so we get a really nice looking art job in this particular comic. So the title of this story is One of These Days, and we turn over to a double page spread, pow, zoom, and we've got Wolverine on the computer monitor here, talking to the assembled X-Men and X Factor, Val Cooper there in the middle, and telling them that he's figured out that Jean Grey, Jean and Scott are on the moon. And of course this shocks everyone here, but just look at the art here on this page. I'll try and keep the page open like that. Nice use of screen tone here by Al Milgrom, very effective, and we'll see that throughout the issue. And you can see what I was saying about the openness of Jay Lee's art on this particular issue, more open for the color, and Glynis Oliver doing yet another sterling color job here. So then Wolverine explains about his doodling on the tabletop on Graymalkin, and how he figured out that this must have been Jean reaching out to his subconscious, and to his subconscious because of the distance. He also says, she reached me intentionally or not, since I'm the one guy aside from Scott that she felt closest to. And that's a point of remark for Iceman and Beast, and just how close is close, the guys ask. But Storm interrupts curtly, never mind that now, and she wants to get back to the core of it, whether Wolverine is picking up anything else from Jean in terms of a telepathic call, and he responds no, which might mean nothing or everything. And I just like this little detail here of Jay Lee's art, where Wolverine's mask, it just goes a little bit beyond his nose tip here, and it curves like a beak. So pretty cool little detail there. And also nice in terms of the color, it picks up on Storm's lightning bolt earring as well. Let's continue. So then we switch to the moon, and Wolverine's inference is correct. Scott and Jean are on the moon, and here they are struggling because of the freezing temperature, and of course most particularly the lack of air. And we see that delineated here by these spiky lines and Cyclops' taut mouth rather, and it's pretty gruesome, the situation that they find themselves in. And the narrative captions here are Wolverine working through the fact that maybe they'll never reach Scott and Jean in time to save them. And here we've got a wordless page. This is really nice. So Peter David restraining himself here from even putting in some thought balloons between Scott and Jean. Jay Lee's art sufficient here to convey the gravity of the situation, the desperation of the situation. Very, very nice work. And again, very cool use of screen tones here. And also that kind of spattered ink effect as well. And we see it here on this page too. And then what happens is Strife emerges from the base and he provides them with some oxygen. Must be using his telekinesis in some way to manage that. And this allows Scott and Jean to breathe and speak a little bit. And so Strife here in this anchor image, very striking anchor image, saying, "Isn't this cozy?" And this particular image has been used for trade paperback collections of Executioner's Song, so it's become iconic via that usage. So let's continue, and we switch back to Wolverine and Storm's conversation regarding what to do next. So Wolverine suggests that he, Bishop, and Cable go to the moon to rescue Scott and Jean, but Storm interrupts. "You will do no such thing. I do not want you hurling yourselves into whatever danger awaits without knowing the circumstances. Instead of having you as an asset, we might have to rescue you as well. I want the three of you to come here via whatever transport means that Cable has." But Cable's not up for that because he's worried about being taken prisoner by them. And so Wolverine says, "Unless you want us to try and strong arm him, it's your call." So Storm agrees, do as Cable says, and they'll arrange their own mode of transportation. So that's it then. And Cable explains to Wolverine here that he can't just body slide onto the moon because there's different gravimetric fields involved. And so he has got to make adjustments to his instrumentation so that they can body slide to the moon safely. And this is going to take time. Wolverine asks, "How long is it going to take?" And Cable says, "If I do it myself, about 20-25 minutes. And Wolverine asks, "And if we help?" "An hour and a half." So Wolverine gets the message. You wouldn't have to have some beer and a deck of cards around here, would you? And then we switch back to Storm and Havoc. And again, you can see the open art here for Glynis Oliver's colours. Really nice palette across these two pages. The greens and the yellows working very well together. And again, that use of screen tone up here for the background. Jay Lee not really doing terribly much in terms of backgrounds. But again, this is a page in point. No real backgrounds on this page, but it works really well. It doesn't affect the storytelling. There's no confusion about where things are taking place. And this is just a beautifully colored page here, where we have the picking of a strike team to go to the moon. So Havoc is making his picks here, and he picks Psylocke to have his back, Warren, Bobby, Lorna, Sam, Ororo, and that's the team that's going to go to the moon. Beast, of course, has to continue to keep an eye on Professor X, whose body is still being ravaged by the techno-organic virus, and his life hanging in the balance. and outside we've got the more comedic members of X Factor listening in and embarrassing Havoc in the meantime. So let's continue back to the moon and Strife with Scott and Jean. So again, basically, he asks them the kinds of questions he's been asking them over all the parts of the crossover, hinting at his true identity. So Scott says regarding Strife, he says to Jean, don't bother asking him what he wants. His kind don't need rhyme or reason beyond their own megalomania. His kind, retorts Strife, up on all the latest supervillain psychology, are we? You're so secure, Cyclops, always knowing that you're in the right, that in your purity you could have never done anything to bring this on yourself. You're all innocence, aren't you? Self-righteous fool, you destroy innocence. So Jean knows that there's something else going on here. There's something more here, something going on. But she starts running out of oxygen again, and or air rather. And so Strife offers them a deal, or Cyclops anyway, a chance. He says it's the least he can do, and I always do the least I can do. In that respect, I take after you. So, like father, like son. And speaking of father-son dynamics, back to Apocalypse and Archangel. So Apocalypse has been resting up from his over early release from his healing cocoon in Egypt, when Strife woke him up to, well, first of all the Dark Riders and then Strife. And Warren has vouched for Apocalypse in terms of having the know-how to cure Professor X of his of the techno-organic virus. And I just want to note something about the art here, that we can see the way that he's rendering the way that he's rendering the details of Archangel's mask here, and he's not 100% perfect about it panel to panel. So there's a kind of like an artistic interpretation of the mask that's its details, its flares, that's ongoing here. But actually maybe there are better panels than these two, and I'll return to this point in due course. So then Apocalypse is released from behind this screen, and he makes his way to Professor X's bedside in the infirmary. In the meantime, we have this little bit of a B-plot going on from X Factor, the title itself, where Madrox, Jamie Madrox, communicates to Havoc that he's lost contact with one of his dupes, the one that was left in the hospital in New York looking over the injured expatriate Taylor. So Havoc decides not to let Val Cooper know about this, that she's got enough on her plate. And then we pop back to Greymalkin, Cable's ship orbiting the Earth, and we have them killing time on the ship. And this is interesting because we'll see this panel 3 times, but in the panels, Cable is whittling a bit of wood, and Wolverine here is playing around with a deck of cards. Bishop just standing stolidly in the background looking out into space. Then we switch back to the X Mansion. So here's Apocalypse reviewing Professor X on the bed, and Havoc there talking with Warren and saying, you know, we're gonna have to watch Apocalypse like a hawk. And Warren responds, Alex, I do everything like a hawk. So Apocalypse refuses to explain to the Beast what exactly it is he's doing, but he just needs this device that he takes out from behind his belt buckle, and approximately 90 seconds, he says, and he won't explain how anything is going to work here. So the gizmo gets going, and then all of this techno-organic wiring emerges from Professor X's mouth. And is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? The Beast starts, he realizes that he's expunging the virus, but then he becomes worried that he's making it worse, that the virus is completely enveloping Xavier. And then Storm orders Warren to move out of the way, but he doesn't. And he says, let him do what he has to. So here's Professor X, and what's going on? Is he being cured or killed? And Warren won't debate anymore. So he's acting as a sentinel here, preventing anyone from interfering with what's going on. And these are the panels I wanted to point out in terms of the detailing on Archangel's mask. So you can see here these flares coming this way and then down along the jaw, but they're not reproduced here in the close-up. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that there isn't that absolute consistency in terms of the markings on his mask. It just works really well either way. And then again, this is the kind of subplot here about the business in the hospital. Let's skip that. We see Cable here on Greymalkin making a bit more progress with his block of wood, whittling away at it with his knife. And then we pick up with Strife, and he is again demanding that Scott and Jean beg him for their lives, so that he can see them with tears streaming down their faces the way that a child would plead with his parent. So all of this again heavily hinting at exactly what his interest in Scott and Jean is. But they refuse to beg. As Scott says, we'd rather die than throw ourselves on the mercy of someone like you. So this denies Strife any pleasure. They conk out because of the lack of air, and he takes off his helmet, but they're not conscious to see it. And he orders them to look at what denials and cruelty have done to him. He orders them, but of course they're unconscious. So, and then we're back looking at the trio on Greymalkin, and we can see that Cable has whittled a block of wood into a likeness of Domino. And also, if you were paying close attention, you'd see that Wolverine has been playing around with the pack of cards. The Ace of Spades in the previous two panels is now Ace of Clubs. And so it's time to go. And they're on their way to the moon. Meanwhile, back on Earth, in the infirmary underneath the X-Mansion, it looks like everything is done with Professor X. And so his body collapses to the ground, and this weird little techno-organic insect creature seems to emerge from his head, it seems, and Apocalypse just stomps on it. And then he explains what he did, how he accelerated the reproduction rate of the virus, essentially giving it a case of terminal indigestion, as the Beast sums up. So Professor X is alive, but he needs to sleep and rest, and he'll be fine once he awakens. So Storm thanks Apocalypse for curing Xavier, and asks him, doesn't ask him, but tells him that they have to get to Scott and Jean on the moon, and Apocalypse volunteers a vessel capable of such a journey. So everything is coming together now, and here we are at the last page. So we're on the moon, we've got Cable, Wolverine and Bishop body sliding in to the base where Strife is, and Wolverine recommends that they take a subtle route to sneaking in, finding Cyclops and Jean, and sneaking out. As he says, if we're lucky, no one will even notice us. But of course, as soon as that door slides open, they're met by a snag in the form of the Dark Riders. So, there you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on X Factor number 86. That is part 10 of Executioner's Song, coming to the end now. And if you did like the video, please like it in YouTube. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.